Last year, while promoting Superman, David Corenswet got wired up to a lie detector.
Have you ever lied about your height to make yourself seem taller than you are?
No, I don't think so.
That is a lie.
This Vanity Fair series is just the latest to use polygraphs as a fun plot device without really exploring how it all works or what all those squiggly lines mean. So I dove into a century of research to learn exactly how accurate these machines are.
Am I wrong that this is kind of better than I expected?
But can we trust them to uncover the lies of celebrities, criminals, and spies? Can they be beaten? And did David Corenswet really get caught in a lie about his height? I want to start by testing your ability. Are you a human lie detector? I'm going to show you 3 real videos of people asking for help after a loved one's mysterious disappearance. Can you tell which one is actually responsible for that disappearance? The videos are a little disturbing, so if you'd like to skip them, jump forward 30 seconds.
Come home. Or if you don't want to come home, just phone somebody. Just let us know you're all right.
Our little princess has been not with us for 2 whole weeks now. We miss her terribly. Every day it gets a little bit harder.
I would just appreciate it if you have got her to please let her go. Please! I mean, she doesn't do anything.
So who was lying? Chances are a lot of you will get that question wrong because it turns out humans are pretty bad at detecting lies, and there are hundreds of studies to back that up. A typical experiment puts a subject in front of a screen and they watch messages from 16 people they've never met.
And they've hired actors, basically, to tell lies.
Usually what they do is they recruit real people to either witness or commit a mock crime, like stealing some money from an office desk. Then they're interviewed about the crime on camera, and then the subject decides if what they heard was a truth or a lie.
It seems like in a study you wouldn't be able to create the emotional stakes that we have in real life around lies.
Yeah, and you'll see this throughout the research around lying. There's this huge trade-off between mimicking the real world and making an experiment you can actually control, meaning you know for sure who is lying. But when this review paper averaged together the results of hundreds of those well-controlled lab studies, they found that when people are randomly served true statements and lies, they get it right just 54% of the time. And that number doesn't seem to vary much from study to study. I did go and look for sort of a real-world version of this, and I came across Would I Lie to You? It's a British game show where celebrities tell stories.
I was once a body double for a head lice advert.
And then other celebrities can ask follow-up questions.
What do you mean a body double?
To try and win points by correctly spotting truths and lies.
We think it's a lie. It's true.
No! This is not a good experimental setup. But it's very interesting to me that the results, if you look at the data, which I crunched, I found someone on Reddit who had gathered data from 16 seasons. I added in 2 more. And it turns out the contestants judged correctly 54% of the time, exactly matching those careful lab experiments.
That's really interesting.
If you break this number down further, I think you can get a little insight into humanity. When you look at all the true stories, these contestants judged 60% of them to be true. But when you look at all the lies, they only got it right 40% of the time. In other words, they tended to think most things were true. And this again matches what was found in the lab. 61% accuracy with truths, 47% accuracy with lies.
Because we just trust?
Mm-hmm.
We tend to trust? Aw, I like that.
It makes sense. Most of what we hear during the day isn't a lie, so we lean towards truth. And it's probably better just for social cohesion to err on the side of missing some lies if it means you avoid false accusations. But since we have this average accuracy of 54%, I'm guessing a lot of you didn't pick the liar out of this lineup. It was number 1. The question is there something we can do to get better at detecting lies? But before I answer that question, I want to thank our sponsor, Cometeer. When I'm in a groove reading papers or working long hours to finish an animation, the last thing I want to do is interrupt the flow to go out to some expensive cafe or spend a ton of time grinding and measuring just to make a good cup of coffee. That's why I'm excited that Cometeer is sponsoring this episode. They've got a truly delicious variety of coffees to help fuel my work, sourced from some of the best roasters in the country, like Onyx and Intelligentsia. They brew the coffee to perfection at 10 times the strength, flash freeze it to lock in the flavor, and then send it to me on dry ice in these little capsules. I like that these aren't plastic, they're fully recyclable aluminum. And all I've got to do is melt it, no machine required. For a hot coffee, pop it out with this little eject button and top it with 8 ounces of hot water. For an iced coffee or iced latte, Thaw a capsule and pour it over ice and water or milk. This takes me seconds, and it's honestly some of the best coffee that I've ever tasted. I think my favorite is Humbler from Proud Mary. It's got kind of this caramely sweetness to it. So if you haven't tried Cometeer, you can get $30 off your first order at cometeer.com/Howtown or by following the link in our description. Can you train yourself to be better at body language cues, etc.?
Body language cues.
You know, obviously there's a bunch of TV shows where this is the premise.
The body contradicts the words. He's lying.
There are these things called micro-expressions.
I could just tell
when anyone is lying.
It's very tempting, to think that you could master this.
Yeah, I obviously have never told a lie, but, when you lie, Joss, you notice things about yourself. You're like, oh, I'm not doing this quite naturally. Right. And so you think, oh, of course, someone else would be able to pick up on that. Law enforcement officials often claim their training gives them special abilities.
I told you they stick at all those fancy schools. Mm-hmm. You just lied to me.
No, yeah.
Lots of police testimony includes references to subtle clues that betray deception. A popular one is that liars look up and to the right. In 2012, a very thorough paper that features one of my favorite scientific figures of all time
Figure one.
found that this type of eye movement wasn't significantly different between liars and truth tellers. This review paper gathered studies on a bunch of other signals, the way people talk or act, visible changes in their bodies. The vast majority of these behavioral cues were no different between truth tellers and liars. So things like blinking, fidgeting, smiling, making eye contact, avoiding eye contact. Then there are some cues that are reliable, but most of them seem a little obvious. True stories are more plausible and personal, and truth tellers correct themselves more often. Liars sound more uncertain. They're more likely to repeat things and stray off topic. And there's just one nonverbal cue that made my list. Liars' pupils dilate more.
I was wondering about this, because I remember pupillometry being sort of a measure that's been applied in various psychological studies. It seems like one of those involuntary giveaways of arousal.
Right. But even for the clearest cues, there's overlap between liars and truth tellers. And maybe more importantly, training people to recognize those cues doesn't seem to improve their accuracy in a meaningful way. Studies show that while cops often believe they're good at sniffing out liars, they're usually no more accurate in detecting deception than students and other citizens. But what if there are cues that we're not able to easily see? What if liars were betrayed by their own bodies, and the right sensitive technology could objectively measure those signals? That's the premise behind lie detectors. One of the earlier lie detectors was built by this guy, William Moulton Marston, a psychologist with a law degree and a writer of historical erotica. His prototype measured blood pressure with a cuff around the arm and translated that input into a continuous line of ink on a scroll of paper. He tested it on soldiers at a World War I training camp in 1918. He'd put them in a room with valuables that they had the option to steal and then hide in their barracks, and then they were interrogated while hooked up to the device. Marston noted that blood pressure rose when people lied, and just by watching those wobbles, he claimed to identify 94% of thieves. Across the country, a Berkeley cop named John Larson was the first to regularly use a polygraph for police work. His device continually measured blood pressure and breathing, thanks to a strap across the chest. And he first tested it at a girl's dorm that had seen a string of unsolved thefts. He interviewed 14 young women, victims, suspects, and random boarders. And when Larson asked a woman named Helen Graham about the theft, he saw a sudden shudder in her readings. Helen got angry and quickly ended the interview, but days later, after hours of interrogation, she confessed to the crime, dropped out of school, and went home to Kansas. For Larson, it was the start of good things. He actually ended up marrying the very first woman he had interviewed, and his polygraphs from other cases were soon splashed across newspapers. He called his device a cardiopneumopsychogram, but the press went with lie detector. The public ate it up, and so did Hollywood.
Would you be willing to take a lie detector test?
In this 1948 film, the examiner isn't an actor. It's John Larson's enthusiastic protege, Leonard Keeler, who I'm delighted to report went by Nard. He was the first to patent a polygraph machine, and his design is remarkably similar to the one still used today. We've still got blood pressure and breathing, though today there's typically 2 lines from a strap around the chest and one around the abdomen.
And the electrodes record the changes in electrical conductivity of the skin,
which is otherwise known as sweating.
So these are all just gauges for your nervous system?
Yeah, these various sympathetic nervous system responses that we associate with fight or flight manifest as a bunch of different changes that examiners are trained to recognize. For example, nervous, fast, shallow breathing will show up as smaller peaks that are closer together. So that's the machine. But the most important part of the test is actually the design of the interview. Here's a typical question sequence adapted from an actual government training manual. They often start with an obvious question.
Are you now in South Carolina?
Is your name Frank Wecheck?
Are you from Rye, New York?
These just help the examiner make sure the machine is recording usable signals. I assume this baseline would be used as a reference point to determine lies, but that's not right. That's the job of comparison questions. These are generic questions about vague misdeeds that are designed to make anyone, guilty or innocent of the target crime, feel a little nervous.
Did you ever steal anything from someone who trusted you?
Finally, there are the relevant questions about the actual crime.
Did you steal any of Charlie's money?
In theory, a guilty person's reaction to the relevant questions should be greater than the surrounding comparison questions, while an innocent person, who can answer truthfully and confidently, should have a smaller reaction. And this is one of the ways that I think the Vanity Fair episodes are not really hewing to the official strategy. I have reached out to Vanity Fair, and they declined to talk to me. But as far as I can tell, they aren't using comparison questions or waiting until after the test to determine lies, which is standard practice. They just announce it right away.
That's not true.
A lie.
Lie again.
Still, the Vanity Fair interviews convey the basic idea. Subtle changes in our bodies are supposed to help identify truths and lies. That's what Nard was selling, and that's what screenwriters were buying.
They're giving him the lie detector test. The
lie detector test.
Anytime you need to quickly eliminate a suspect,
Ridgway passed the polygraph.
Harris passed the polygraph.
And he passed.
Passed the polygraph twice.
But there's one important detail that only a few of these scripts mention.
The result of a lie detector test isn't admissible evidence.
Polygraphs aren't allowed in most courtrooms. Way back in 1923, Marston tried to get one of his tests entered as evidence, but the judge said the device didn't have enough scientific acceptance. And courts have upheld and reaffirmed that precedent again and again. Marston was beaten in court, but he eventually triumphed in fiction. He went on to create the character Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman!
She was partly inspired by one of Marston's partners, seen here assisting him with the test while wearing her signature bracelets. Wonder Woman was also equipped with a lasso of truth.
The lasso of Hestia compels you to reveal the truth.
And in a comic written by Marston, this lie detector finally got its day in court. Why don't real judges welcome real lie detectors into their courtrooms? Well, perhaps you've already spotted 4 problems with this system.
We know by now that there is no Pinocchio's nose, right? There is no one thing that every liar does.
And these signals that polygraphs pick up aren't exclusively signs of lying, but of stress.
Imagine that you're not guilty, but you're there as a suspect and you're interviewed. Maybe you're nervous because you're afraid of not being believed. And you show exactly these kinds of signs.
If that person was just asked, hey, did you commit a murder? Like, an innocent person would also be kind of freaked out by that.
Being interrogated, yeah.
That panic could spike on a relevant question and trigger a false alarm. Now, people have tried to build better lie detectors based on different signals, like brain activity or voice recordings.
The technology, I mean, it works fine. It might detect stress in a voice. The problem, however, is it doesn't detect lie.
Right, it's just a different signal. Instead of blood pressure, it's the voice. And so that has all the same problems of, I could be nervous about something else.
Exactly.
So, George, how do I beat this lie detector?
Remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
There's lots of reasons that your subject might be telling you a lie, but they actually believe that. Maybe they're misinformed or misremembering. Maybe they have some mental issue. Jack Ruby, who killed the assassin Lee Harvey Oswald, demanded a polygraph test to prove he hadn't been in cahoots with Oswald, and he passed. But investigators believed that there was no validity to the results because everyone agreed
that Mr. Ruby is of unsound mind and is incapable of conducting his own affairs.
This dataset contains 5 years of polygraph tests used by the Washington State Patrol to screen potential job applicants.
Do you have what it takes?
Are they just trying to find the kind of person who lies, or are they looking for people who are lying about something in particular?
They're looking for people who are lying about past crimes, drug use, in some cases on this list, sexual contact with animals.
Because you don't want to hire a state trooper who's ever the sheep, like something like that.
Exactly.
Do you have what it takes?
2 examiners were particularly busy, each conducting about 1,000 tests. One failed just 7% of applicants, the other 22%. These different examiners had different thresholds they were using for catching a liar. And if polygraph results depend on the examiner, if they're subjective, you can easily imagine how their personal biases might start to creep in.
It seems like it would be easy to beat.
One way is to increase your response to the comparison questions so that the real response doesn't meet that threshold.
You do some countermeasures, meaning maybe you bite your tongue or you press your toe into the floor.
In Ocean's 13, this guy beats a polygraph by pushing on a tack in his shoe, but apparently simply pressing down on your toe is enough. In this lab study, they trained subjects to do those two physical countermeasures, and another group to do some mental math. All of these tricks allowed more than half of liars to avoid detection. And real-world cases show it doesn't even have to be that complicated. In 1985, a traitorous CIA officer named Aldrich Ames filled 2 plastic shopping bags with top-secret communications and went to sell them at this swanky bar to a Soviet official. Over the course of several years, Ames revealed the identities of a bunch of U.S. agents in exchange for millions of dollars. And twice during this period, the CIA subjected Ames to a lie detector test. But somehow, he passed the polygraph twice. For his first polygraph, Ames was tremendously worried, and the polygraph did detect some deception. But Ames later said the trick was just to have a friendly relationship with the examiner, rapport where you smile and make him think that you like him. And the CIA examiner did find him truthful, bright, and direct. Ames told his KGB contacts about the second polygraph test, and they were like, just relax. Something as simple as that can beat the test.
Especially if you're a professional spy.
Yeah. So those are the 4 potential problems with polygraphs. But how do these machines actually perform in the field? Can they help us catch liars? In 2003, a big government report tackled that very question. And to understand what they found, you first have to understand this square of truth. On this grid, we can show how good any person or system or technology is at sorting truths from lies. Moving right, you correctly identify more truths. Moving up, you correctly identify more lies. Here's where the average human falls. Remember, they identify 61% of truths and 47% of lies for an average accuracy of 54%. Wonder Woman, with her magical lasso, is up in this corner. She gets everything right. This is the ideal. So where do polygraphs fall? These are the results from the 52 lab experiments that met this report's quality standards. It's a bit messy, but the report finds that most data points fall on this curve, and where you land on this curve depends on how you interpret the polygraph results. If you interpret every extra little wiggle of a needle as evidence of deception, you'll end up in this corner, where you're definitely going to catch every lie, but you'll also think most true statements are a lie. You'll falsely accuse a bunch of people. This corner is too suspicious. Over here, you'll end up believing that nearly everything is true, so you'll get most truths right, but you'll miss a lot of lies. This corner is too trusting. If you try to balance those 2 kinds of errors, you end up here in the middle. The worse the device is at distinguishing between truth and lies, the flatter the curve becomes. The better it is, the more it pushes up towards Wonder Woman.
Am I wrong that this is kind of better than I expected? You've got the average human here, and they're all doing better than the average Joe.
Yeah. That's your first reaction is like, oh, it's not too bad, especially when it's plotted like this.
It's not doing nothing. It's not random noise.
The problem is when you bring it out into the real world and try to use it practically. There's 2 real-world scenarios that I want to examine. Let's start with police interrogations. The results shown here are all from lab studies trying to mimic that scenario. For example, this study took a group of prisoners and had half of them steal some money. Then, if they passed a polygraph test, whether they were guilty or innocent, they got something like $80. A couple tests were inconclusive, but the conclusive tests correctly identified every guilty prisoner and nearly all of the innocent ones. But years later, researchers redid the experiment, this time with higher stakes. Now, if 10 people failed their tests, no one would get $80, and a list of the people who failed would be publicly posted. In this scenario, accuracy dropped. 42% of truth-tellers were falsely accused. It seems that introducing real-world consequences made innocent people nervous enough to start failing their polygraphs. But why are we talking about these imperfect lab studies and not just testing the device in the real world? Well, there's one central issue. How do you even confirm whether something's true or not? Ground truth. Yeah. Exactly. Take this study of 402 polygraph exams conducted by the police in Vancouver, Canada, over 5 years. The researchers first tried to establish ground truth, but it was hard. Polygraphs are often used in cases where other sources of evidence fall short. There were only 69 conclusive tests where they found enough evidence to establish true guilt or innocence with high confidence. In that pool, polygraphs correctly caught 98% of confirmed guilty people. But there's good reason to think that the real percentage is lower. Some of these other past tests could have included liars who were just never caught. So we're probably missing some false negatives that would bring the average down. When it comes to innocent people, the polygraphs found that 45% of them were lying. They were innocent, and they still failed. similar to what we saw in the study of motivated prisoners. That's a big problem, and not just because it could lead an investigation astray. It could also lead to innocent people giving false confessions.
People often get backed into a corner where they say something that self-incriminates them. I've got it right here in black and white. So either you can face the death penalty, or you can start telling me what we want to hear. There are people who develop false memories. You have somebody in who, at the time of the crime, was under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and they don't quite remember the chain of events. I can tap into things that you might not even be aware of yourself. We've seen documented testimony of people who said that they came to doubt their own memories.
Innocent people confessing and guilty people getting away with lies really clouds our picture of the real world. But from everything I've read, it seems like field accuracy lands somewhere in this general zone. Polygraphs are better at catching lies than people are, but they're still uncertain and prone to false accusations.
Unless it was like 99% accurate, it's just not the kind of test that we should apply to an individual in any high-stakes situation. How are you going to know when the case that you're looking at and the individual human that you're applying to is one of those errors?
Helen Graham, the very first suspect ever accused based on a polygraph, may have also been the device's first victim. After she left for Kansas, thefts at her dorm continued. She wrote to her interrogator, John Larson, that she was innocent and had been tricked into a confession. As time went on, Larson started to doubt his creation and then actively argue against it. This scientific investigation became a Frankenstein's monster, he said, which I have spent over 40 years in combating. The second application of polygraphs is screening, trying to weed out unacceptable job applicants or sweep your government for spies, or more recently, people who leak to the press.
We're using polygraphs to look at all of our employees, all of our people involved in these operations.
There's even less real-world data about how polygraphs perform in this situation. Proponents of the technology claim it's a curve like this, and for the sake of argument, let's say they're right. How does that play out in the real world? Imagine a government department with 1,000 employees. 10 are spies. Now you polygraph test everybody. If you balance suspicion and trust here, you catch 8 spies and miss 2, but you also end up falsely accusing 160 honest employees. So right now you've got 168 people. Do you fire all of them? If you try to reduce those false positives, you take down your suspicion until you only falsely accuse 4 innocent people. Now you've only found 2 spies. And that's before considering those spies might have been trained to beat a polygraph.
But it does seem like if the consequences of firing completely innocent, honest workers are lower than the consequences of sort of a spy sneaking in, then you could justify, the injustice involved in these kind of wrongful terminations.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't care about hurting individual people, then you can dial up the suspicion of all these tests quite high.
Yeah.
And say, well, we're going to catch the perpetrator. We're also going to hurt some other people, but at least we caught the perpetrator.
Or I guess the best case scenario is that it serves as a deterrent against lying.
Right.
If the general public thinks these things are legit, it's kind of like a weird placebo effect, right?
Exactly.
They're afraid of this machine and they're like, oh, it's not worth it to lie.
In the data from the Washington State Patrol, you see that. About a third of the people, they meet with the polygraph examiner and they take no test. Just getting in the room with this scary truth machine is inspiring people to confess.
I'm not sure if you know the episode of The Wire where they say they're going to use a polygraph test, but they use a printer.
Lie. Lie.
The machine is never wrong, son.
That's effective, but it's not very ethical.
Good old Nard liked to do this card trick before tests.
I want you to take one of these cards. Did you take the 3 of spades?
No.
Queen of hearts?
No.
The ace of hearts?
He'd claim to use the polygraph to identify the correct card.
You took the 5 of diamonds, Frank, did you?
Yes, sir.
But to make sure he never got it wrong, Nard would often use marked cards. The more someone believes in the power of the polygraph, the more nervous they'll be about lying and the more likely they are to either fail the test or confess before it's even begun. So the best way to beat a polygraph is actually just to stop believing in it. The Vanity Fair series is just another type of pre-test card trick.
I'm really nervous. The machine has been calibrated.
A bit of theater that makes us wonder if this flawed machine is actually an infallible lie detector.
I've been doing lie detection research now for 15 years, and we don't have anything that works better than maybe like 70, 75%, like that's it. Lie detection, I would say overall, is very lazy. Truth finding is what you should do.
Aldrich Ames wasn't taken down by a polygraph machine, but by a detailed investigation into his finances after he started wearing designer suits, bought a fancy house, and got veneers on his teeth. They probably would have found him out sooner if they'd done more thorough interviews to look for inconsistencies.
Ask very critical questions. You want to get more information and as much information as possible.
Get them to say fact-checkable things.
Exactly.
Falsifiable things, yeah.
Like,
Hi, I'm David Corenswet and I'm 6'4".
Is that a lie? It's time to get deep into the weeds. But first, if you've made it this far, I hope you'll consider supporting Howtown. We have a very small team. It's just the three of us. We kind of do a little bit of everything, and it's a lot of work.
Yes, and if you would like to support this kind of journalism or just hang out with a lot of cool people, you can join our Patreon. We are providing ad-free versions of our videos there for any of our paying members from the $4 tier up, which means you don't have to deal with sponsorship reads or YouTube's mid-roll pop-ups, pre-roll. You can watch just the whole pure Howtown content at patreon.com/Howtown.
Back to the mystery of David Corenswet's height.
We're definitely at least the same height.
Yeah, and when I go to the doctors, they measure me with the proper thing. I'm like 189 and a bit centimeters.
Which is about 6'2.5", and when you look at pictures of them together, they look pretty similar. So it's time to gather some evidence from the real world. Internet detective Shane Fan calculated Corenswet's height from this photo using these barricades as a reference.
6'2" and 4'5".
But I think he made some mistakes, starting with these barricades.
I found the exact model with a height of 43 inches.
But you can see in this cell phone video I found that it's not the exact model. Drew, a member of our Patreon, went out and actually measured the barriers on this block and found they averaged 43 3/4 inches. But of course, these things aren't pristine. Their height varies quite a bit. I think Shane did correctly track down Corenswet shoes. They're priced for movie stars or maybe CIA moles. And I called up these luxury cobblers first thing in the morning. Hi, I'm just hoping to get a little more information about one of your shoes. A very nice person there put me on hold so she could measure multiple pairs of these specific shoes.
How tall is Superman? Yeah. How tall is Superman?
So 22 to 24 is sort of the range. That's pretty close to the number Shane uses. Final issue, Corenswet's posture doesn't seem fully upright. I asked an AI to identify his joints, but straightening them out only added 4 to 5 pixels. Put that all together and I calculate a height of 6 foot 3.4 inches. But I'm going to show you something a lot of internet detectives don't. The uncertainty created by unclear barrier height, socks and shoes, and potential errors I made in my pixel measurements. I'm very confident Corenswet falls in this range, but that's not good enough. This picture was taken on the same day and features better posture and more reliable reference objects. I was able to get in touch with a photographer who confirmed the camera and lens he used, and I sent another Howtown Patreon supporter named Spencer to the Empire State Building, where he made a whole bunch of careful measurements. Redoing the calculations and accounting for lens distortion, I now arrive at 6 foot 3.2 inches, and there's a much smaller confidence range below 6'4". But before we pass judgment, consider this paper, Circadian Variation in Human Stature. We gain height at night and start losing it when we stand up in the morning as our bodies compress. The change is about 1% of total height. Based on where the light is falling and the shadow angles, I'd say this photo was taken around 9:15 a.m., right after an appearance on the Today Show.
Morning, great to see you both.
So he had already been up for at least a couple hours. This photo has a timestamp around 2 p.m., and if we extrapolate his height at 2 along this curve, we'd expect him to be near 6 foot 3.5 at 9, very close to our earlier estimate, and at his tallest, the moment he wakes up, he would be 6 foot 4.
Hi, I'm David Corenswet and I'm 6'4".
Regardless of the facts, we can't know if David is lying here because we don't know what he believes to be true. But even if this were as simple as determining his actual height, we've seen how reality is complicated. It resists easy answers and clear determinations of precise truth. That's what we're all about here at Howtown.
Yep. Resist the part of yourself that's desperate for answers, because there are people who are really eager to take advantage of that impulse.
Will you tell me if you can? I gotta know, how tall is Superman? Is he 6'4", or maybe more? I gotta know. I have to know.
Hello.